In today's songwriting vlog, I want to share some thoughts on choosing a musical direction. If you're new to this channel, which you probably are because this is my second video, I'm Simon. I've been a guitarist for quite a while now, probably my whole life actually, but after years of putting just random riffs and chord progressions into my DAW and just forgetting about them, I've decided this year to give songwriting a good proper go. This includes learning vocals, trying to become better at performing, building up my guitar skills, in particular my lead work, and actually creating solos, and of course putting out a couple of EPs maybe, and maybe even working up to the full album. That would be nice, but in the meantime, I'm just taking things bit by bit and just seeing how we go. Which leads me to a little dilemma I have. As someone who's a real broad rock fan such as myself, over the years I've really developed some ideas around different styles of music. Like this includes punk rock, this includes some more straight edge rock like Foo Fighters kind of things, maybe some ska punk songs in there, and of course there's a lot of metal that I listen to, so that's really coming out into what I'm writing. One of my favourite musicians is Devin Townsend. If you haven't heard of him, he's been around for a little while. He's like more progressive metal musician nowadays, but he did get his start. He was plucked out of obscurity by one Steve Vai. Devin did some vocals for him for 5 years. Then he went off and did a little band called Strapping Young Lad, which was more of an extreme metal. He developed a bit of an image of the mad scientist of metal because he had a lot of different projects going on. And I think what ended up happening was it got a little bit too much for him, so I think he scaled it back a bit. And that started off with the album Ziltoid the Omniscient, which was one that he did all on his own. And then he progressed into the Devin Townsend project, which released just a whole heap of albums between 2009 to about 2018 or so. Then he blew it all up and started again and put out Empath. I got to chat to him a couple of years ago for an interview I did with Wall of Sound, and he's really developed into a player that's been able to write in many different styles. Like, he doesn't just do metal, he can do orchestral kind of bits and pieces, he can do funny, his like recent live DVD, he did a disco cover. He actually put out a punk rock album many years ago, which was called Punky Brewster, which was more of a piss take on pop punk thing that was blowing up at the time, but even then he still managed to pull off some really great songs. I have a lot of respect for his ability to write in multiple styles, because I'm not sure I can do the same without it coming across as very disjointed. The thing is, last year I was writing a lot more around the punk style because I've been really getting into punk and ska again over the last 2 years or so. And when I say again, I mean I was a fan of it coming up through the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s obviously, but I've sort of branched towards metal, but in the last couple of years I sort of fell back to punk a little bit and started listening to a lot of those bands over again and just starting to really become a fan of punk as a genre all over again. What actually prompted that was, in the last 2 years, I became a huge fan of MXPX. Previously, I hadn't actually heard of MXPX until a few years ago. I do remember when I was first getting into punk, which was around 1999-2000, the name MXPX came up somewhere. I think I was on a flyer for a show or something like that, and I made the mental note to check out MXPX, but never did. And for some reason, throughout the last probably 20 years or so, MXPX have just eluded me for some strange reason. But one day on Facebook, Mike Herrera in about 2017-2018 underwent this almost rebranding of himself just to sort of try and strengthen his brand on social media and his overall personal brand, I guess. And that's how I found MXPX and Mike Herrera. One day on Facebook, while browsing, his ad came up on Facebook. That means if you're a band watching this and wondering if Facebook ads work, yeah, they kind of do actually. Mike's ad came up on Facebook and it was just him playing one of his MXPX songs on guitar, and that led me to go down the rabbit hole of discovering this band that had been around for 20 years, but it just eluded me for some reason. But what that sort of did for me was it sort of inspired me a little bit to get back in towards songwriting and creating music again as more of a goal. And I think having that inspiration can be really important. However, over the last few months, my guitar writing and my listening has actually flipped back towards metal. So for the last couple of months or so, I've been doing a few different ideas in the metal realm, and what I've got to say, what I've been developing lately is not actually all that bad. The problem is, of course, my vocal skills aren't really at that same level as my guitar playing would be for metal. What I liked about the thing of writing punk was the idea that I could sing somewhat decently within that genre. The voice had a little bit of a Green Day style, and I could definitely incorporate probably into some of my metal songs, but I have no idea how to do the scream or the vocal distortion properly. I'm able to do sort of like a sort of a breathing kind of thing, but as you can hear, it doesn't have that real volume to it. I want to learn. I have a few Udemy courses lined up and some YouTube tutorials lined up. Yes, I know learning off YouTube is fraught with danger. I want to try learning how to sing in that style, but I know it's going to take some time. So my dilemma right now is, what direction do I pick for my songwriting that I'm doing at the moment? Do I go back to writing punk songs because it's easier and I can get the songs done quicker and I can perform these easier if I ever finally get back on Twitch? Or do I embrace the challenge and go for writing metal? And I've probably just answered my own question. I say challenge because it's not just about learning vocals. Like, I realized that was going to be hard enough to learn on its own, but also it's about improving my lead playing and writing and creating better riffs. What I'm coming up with isn't what I would probably term modern metal, in the sense of, like, say, it doesn't sound like Northlane or Polaris, to use Australian bands. Mainly because I don't have a 7-string. Yes, I'm a guitarist that doesn't own a 7-string. I'm a fucking unicorn. It probably has a more older style sort of feel to it. There's a bit of Trivium influence in there, but more of a Pantera, Testament-y kind of thrashy kind of thing. And of course Machine Head and bands like that have been a big influence, so that's come out in what I've been coming up with lately as well. And although I know it's an unhealthy thing to compare your music up against other bands, especially when you consider those bands have been developing the sound for probably decades, and I'm only just starting to write in a particular style. But I know developing my own style takes time, and I haven't even touched on the art of lyric writing yet. And I guess I probably answered my own question in this, but I feel like today's vlog is more about getting some thoughts out there and maybe establishing a few goals in the end game of finally releasing some finished work. Sorry, just to interrupt all that. When I recorded that a few weeks ago, and I know it's been a couple of weeks between the vlog posts, and I'm trying to get better video editing, so hopefully the next one won't be as long. But when I recorded that, everything I said back then was true, and I was deep in metal mode, I guess you could say, and I was liking what I was coming up with. But then I got to thinking, what I want to do essentially is a solo EP, and maybe in that case I mean to be considering what my strengths are and not necessarily relying on skills that I haven't learnt yet. And I am referring to the fact that in terms of vocal work, I don't really know how to fry scream yet, and I don't know how to do more extreme vocals. And yes, it's possible that I could learn those sorts of things, but I think relying on skills that you don't necessarily have yet is what's going to keep you from getting to the end goal of releasing something and finishing something. So I think my strengths in terms of my vocals and my songwriting, it's more in the punk realm. And yes, well, I'm talking about more like Green Day kind of things, but also a little bit more Mix PX and More Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish and those sorts of bands that I actually like. I like Green Day, but I like those bands more. So while I could definitely do metal, my gut feeling is that if I wanted to come back to it, I'd actually need a band for it. When I say that, I mean I need to get someone in who's a bit more experienced with doing the more extreme vocals, and maybe the songs that I'm coming up with in the metal realm need to be just put on the back burner for a little while, and maybe I should just concentrate on developing a more punk style because that's where my strengths are. I feel like I can still come up with some great stuff, but maybe I could come up with some even better stuff without having to rely on, again, skills that I haven't learnt yet. But there is a few other little bits and pieces that I need to do, and of course lyric writing, I need to get better in that. So maybe in terms of actual songwriting, maybe I do need to stick within the punk rock genre. Anyway, I just thought I'd put these thoughts out into the open and just see what happens, I guess. And maybe this is a case of just overthinking things a little bit, and maybe I should just get on with it and get it done. Yes, you're absolutely right. But I think it is worth putting these sorts of thoughts out into the open, into the YouTube world, and I'd like to do some more of it as we go along. Thanks for watching if you made it this far, and I'll have some more songwriting vlogs soon. Give us a like and also a subscribe, and I'll definitely have some more videos on the way. Until next time though, catch you later.